Hello and welcome back. Today we will be continuing our tutorial series here in Victoria 3. We will be talking about the top 10 states, how to evaluate states, as well as giving a whole bunch of honorable mentions for best states that kind of have their own niche or reason for being mentioned. For this, we have developed a way of kind of evaluating states. You might notice it up above. This is the resource score. We give a quarter of a point for arable land, modified by what type of goods they can produce, as well as if they have any bonuses specifically in terms of throughput. All of these are modified by throughput bonuses, which we'll mention when we talk about each state. For gold, we gave 6 points per level. Oil, we gave 2.5 points per level. Lead, 1.2 points per level. Iron and coal give 1 point per level. Sulfur gives 0.85 points per level. Lumber, whales, and rubber, all 1 point per level. And fish gives 3/4 of a point per level. Some just quick notes on why. Gold is extremely strong early game. It allows you to construct a lot. It's one of the most valuable resources in the game, but it falls off quite a bit. Oil is extremely important late game, and a good way to evaluate any sort of province is later on the oil provinces have become extremely valuable. Super early, the gold provinces are very valuable. For lead, it is often you run late game shortages of lead, but is not super important early on. Iron and coal are very important early on for early industrial efforts, so you'll want to be going for those provinces kind of early. For sulfur, we have 0.85. It is generally one of the less important ones. Generally, you're not going to want to just absolutely push the sulfur resource-oriented stuff early game, because you have like paper for sulfide paper, printing or whatever it is, and this sort of stuff, so it's less valuable. In late game, you almost never run sulfur shortages unless you just have none available. For lumber, we put it at 1, super good early. Often you have hardwood shortages late game. It is what it is. Sometimes you have hardwood problems. Whales, we gave 1. It gives both food and it also gives oil, which is nice, but it's not a ton of oil. Maybe this value should be a little bit lower. For rubber, we just gave 1, and for fish, we gave 3/4 of a point. Now, important to note, one of the other things that's generally important when evaluating any of these is going to be population, which has become less of a factor in patch 1.2, because now you can get Great Qing, or Heavenly Kingdom, into your market, which is important for sapping off pops. But if you want to make labor cheaper, taking one state with an enormous population, if we hover here, we can see population, is generally a good idea and will be extremely valuable for you. But we're not using it too much when evaluating the states here. Otherwise, it would just be a list of a bunch of Chinese states. Once you have one, then you will just slowly sap off the peasants from that state if you have multiculturalism, and this will be really valuable for lowering labor, but it is difficult to evaluate population otherwise. And finally, there are a few states that give global bonuses, and global bonuses in general we're valuing pretty highly in our evaluation, although it is not, we can't put it into a resource score. So first up, in the 10th place, we have Silesia here in the North German Federation. In terms of bonuses, they have a coal mining throughput bonus as well as an infrastructure bonus, and this state has a total resource score of 329 points. It has the most available mining in the entire game in terms of the 4 main mining resources, with coal mines of 120, remember this plus 10% juice on throughput, iron mines at 60, lead mines at 54, sulfur mines at 40, and logging camps at 14. Now, it is important to note we are just giving a 10% juice for our resource score on the 10% throughput bonus, even though it's not actually producing a total of 10% more coal, because it is additively stacked with other throughput bonuses. But early on, this bonus will be extremely valuable, and later on, the juice is not as important, because you see it's not 10% more than it would produce otherwise, because it's already getting 50% from economies of scale. We are also not putting economies of scale into consideration, but any mining or any type of extraction is much more valuable when it has level 51 or higher than when it does lower. There's not a good mathematical way to put this into Excel, but this is just something to consider. Stuff over 51 is going to be a lot more valuable than stuff under 51. But this is the best mineral province in the game. It's not coastal, so it's hard to get to, and so your runs will not center around trying to acquire this province very often, but if you're in the German region, very, very nice to take. In ninth place, with a resource score of 333, we have Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania has, in terms of bonuses, they have a bonus for hardwood output, and they have a bonus for coal mining's throughput output. But again, they have negative infrastructure and state construction efficiency, so this is going to be one that you maybe don't want to build a ton of manufacturing in. But as far as the resources go, we have 30 oil, 120 coal, which is juiced, 57 iron, and 23 logging camps. That's a lot of logging camps. We also, in Pennsylvania, have 180 arable land, which is a pretty good number, as well as the ability to build at least one luxury resource. So we kind of have this in the neutral zone in terms of how valuable the arable land is, but it is slightly devalued in terms of arable land score because we have this decrease in infrastructure and state construction efficiency. One of the values of arable land is you can build manufacturing taller the more arable land you have, because you will incur less of a penalty in terms of migration attraction as a result of overcrowding because you have a ton of arable land. And so if you can't build as tall because of construction efficiency and infrastructure inefficiency, then it becomes less valuable. But overall, Pennsylvania is very strong. It also has oil, which is kind of why it is scoring better than Silesia, because Silesia overall has more mining. But okay. In 8th place, we have Texas with a resource score of 320. This is one of the few states that is not just progressing up linearly in terms of resource score, and we can give a couple reasons for that. No special modifier for Texas. We have 50 oil, which is by far the most important mineral extraction, 36 sulfur, 28 coal, 7 logging camps, 6 fishing wharfs. There's also an arable land of 500. And it is important to note in terms of the population who will normally be in Texas, it'll be African American and Dixie, which does have a European culture group. So one of the reasons that Texas scores higher is, first of all, it's coastal, so it's easier for you to take. But second of all, it is one of the best provinces to put your capital in the game is if you are of European descent and you decide you want to move your capital to a better place, because it is the best place to build tall. Out of any European state, it has the most arable land. So if we're playing like German, or we're playing UK, or we're playing France, we will be able to incorporate Texas in only 5 years. And then once if we have a lot of assimilation, if we're on public schools, we will eventually be able to get our primary culture group up there high, and then be able to move the capital there. And the 500 arable land means that you can get a ton of population there before you start hitting the overcrowding bonus. So this is one of the best provinces in the game. It also does have a ton of resources. In the arable land, you can build sugar, so it's relatively valuable. We could put it at net neutral, but being able to build sugar and the cotton, as well as the maize and the livestock, very, very, very strong province. All right, next up, in 7th place, we have Perm, which Perm is maybe the best in the top 10 list. I believe it has the most oil. We have a total oil rigs of 60. 6 of these haven't been discovered yet. We have the level 75 iron mine and level 80 coal mine. It is important to note, if they're over level 51 or 51 and up, they're a lot more valuable. So if these were instead like split between sulfur and other resources, they would be less valuable. We have a logging camp of 20, and we have a total of 100 arable land. In terms of modifiers, we do get logging industry throughput, which is extremely strong, especially early game. This is not just hardwood, this is all of logging. And then also we have the 20% iron mines throughput juice, again super good early on, but you will notice this pretty hefty negative infrastructure and state construction efficiency negative. So generally you will not want to build as much manufacturing here. You will just want to build up the resources, extract the resources, probably keep it unincorporated. That way you get the juice from the law of colonial exploitation, which gives 10% throughput in unincorporated states. And so you can just crank out as much natural resources as possible from the state. Again, it has a resource score of 360. Okay. In 6th place, we have the first Chinese state, and that is Shanxi. Now, Shanxi has an enormous amount of resource potentials. We have 116 coal mines, 96 iron mines, 48 sulfur mines, and 7 logging camps. We also have the Yellow River, which gives an infrastructure buff, and the Loess Plateau, which gives an agricultural throughput buff. Now, this agricultural throughput buff does not apply to plantations. So, for example, it won't help the tobacco, but the other, or the tea, but it'll help livestock and wheat farms. So we gave it a pretty big juice in terms of the value of the arable land. There's also a total of 375 arable land here, making it a very good province for both building infrastructure, building toll, as well as extracting a whole bunch of resources. This is one of the more balanced provinces we've come through so far, along with Texas. Again, resource score of 368 here. This is a very, very, very strong province. It is one of the strongest Chinese provinces. It is the strongest Chinese province just in terms of raw resources and potentials. And building here will be very good. Again, it's not landlocked, but another thing to point out is this is the first state that has an absolutely enormous population. And so oftentimes taking like Hebei into Shanxi or Beijing into Shanxi can be an effective strategy for getting more pops into your country in terms of just thinking about expansion, but the value of the total resources we put at 368. Okay, in 5th place, we have California. Now, California has, let's take a look. They have 50 oil, but very importantly, they have 12 gold mines, which is extremely valuable, especially early on in the game. The gold falls off late game, but early on it allows you to construct a whole lot. Just the extra juice into your economy is extremely valuable when you're trying to ramp up construction and you're just relying on having a lot of government money to do this. Government money gets easier to come by as you get later on into the game. We also have a sulfur mines of 40, iron mines of 33. Again, it would be better if it was just one or the other in terms of practice, but in terms of our scoring, it's the same either way. What I mean is it'd be better to have a level 70 something than split between two different things. We have 14 fishing wharves, which is quite a big number, and 13 logging camps. Now, the modifiers for California are a mixed bag. We have 20% logging industry throughput. Now, this is logging, not hardwood, so this is going to be quite good. But this also suffers the minus construction efficiency malus, minus 10%. And we have minus 10% infrastructure from Sierra Nevada, along with 20% agricultural throughput buff, which is quite large. And so we have 300 arable land here. This is going to be an extremely nice state for building up all of these resource yields, but in terms of building tall and manufacturing, it's going to be not as nice because you have the infrastructure malus and the construction efficiency malus. It's not the best place to have your capital because it's not that great for building tall, but it is still an extremely strong state that's going to generate you a ton of resources. It has a resource score of 371. Okay, and this state is extremely valuable. It is the only state on the top 10 list that has gold. Generally, the states that have gold are not so good. Otherwise, although there will be a few honorable mentions that we get to, but in 5th place, we have California. Now, in 4th place, we have the state of Ontario, with a resource score of 214. So we went from 371 with California to 214 with Ontario. Let's quickly cover the resources, and then we'll cover why Ontario is so good. So we have sulfur mines of 48, decent. We have oil rig potential of 40. We have logging camps of 23, which is quite a high number, and then we have a total arable land count of 200, which is nothing to sneeze at. If we take a look at the bonuses, we see we get some infrastructure, but the very important ones is the Niagara Falls bonus. The Niagara Falls bonus is absolutely insane, and what you do in Ontario is you just build a ton of electricity. Now, electricity, without going too much into talking about the nature of goods itself, electricity is one of the resources that a throughput bonus is going to be really nice on, because it is stuck on your market. You cannot export electricity, and it makes all your other stuff more efficient. You know, it makes your logging more efficient. It makes all your tailors and stuff more efficient. So this generates a huge comparative advantage relative to other states when you can get a 20% throughput juice on your electricity that other countries can't. This is an extremely powerful modifier, and this is the reason why Ontario is so high, even though it has a relatively low resource score of 214. Now, its resources are nothing to sneeze at. 40 oil, 48 sulfur, 23 logging camps, alongside pretty hefty agriculture. This is still quite strong, but it is not strong as any of the other ones we've covered in the top 10 list so far. Now, before we get into the top 3, I think it's important or valuable to talk about all the honorable mentions we have here in terms of countries, or sorry, states and this sort of thing. One honorable mention is very similar to Ontario, and that is Dalmatia, which has a resource score of 19, which is the second lowest one we're going to mention. But why it is valuable is because you are getting this 15% juice on electricity. This is the only state not in the top 10 list which has the electricity output juice, and this is extremely valuable, but it's also hard to evaluate in a vacuum. Taking the state will be generally kind of expensive because it's still got a decent population at the start of the game, and so it's a bit tough to... This will boost your country a ton because it'll boost your ability to, you know, have really cheap electricity on all your manufacturing because you just build the electricity up super, super tall here. But it itself, in terms of its resources, is basically a nothing burger. It's just a juice for your country's electricity. Speaking of the throughput bonus, there's one other type of juice you can get on manufacturing, and that is on your shipping industries, which you can never really build that tall. Just about every single province in Norway has this 15% shipbuilding throughput, which is the highest bonus available. There's also one province here in Denmark that has 15%, and that is this one, Zealand. And then also the home countries has the 15% shipyards building throughput juice. Any sort of 10% or 15% province is going to be good for that reason, independent of the amount of resources it has, but these are the 15%ers. And other than that, there is no other than the electricity and the shipyards building throughput, there's no other juice on manufacturing specifically. All the throughput bonuses that are gotten from these special bonuses relative to the province apply to a resource extraction specifically. But taking a province in Norway just to get better ships or more competitive ships is somewhat reasonable, but you'll never build the shipyards up past level 100, whereas you will definitely do that with electricity. So the electricity juice is much more valuable than the shipyards juice, in my estimation, especially because electricity is a more important good. Okay, for the next honorable mention is any monument that didn't make the list. Is often a good one to consider. And here we're going to take a look at Vatican City, which in my estimation is the best monument that did not make the top 10 list. Now, the resource score of Lazio is relatively low at 32. It just has some logging camps, some fishing wharves, and a little bit of arable land, although it's nice that it can produce silk over here. But the real thing is just the Vatican City giving you 100 authority and 100 influence. If you have the colonial exploitation and this is not incorporated, this will get juiced by the 10% colonial throughput from unincorporated, which is important to remember. 100 flat authority or 110 flat authority is extremely strong. The only reason why this didn't make the top 10 list for me is that this plus 25% juice on the religious group, I think is a negative modifier. I think it is bad to juice the political strength. It makes passing stuff early on kind of annoying, and you don't want the religious group to be super powerful late game, mainly because the game currently, as it sits, makes total separation extremely strong. You're going to have a bunch of laws the religious group hates. Very often the religious group you want them to be marginalized because you don't want to get the minus education access malice from them if they are not marginalized. But overall, this is still a very, very, very nice province off the, 100 authority juice. Two other countries that kind of didn't make it that have pretty good monument buildings are going to be Great Britain, the home countries in Great Britain, which has Big Ben, which has a 1% throughput juice. If the home countries actually had a sizable amount of arable land, which they don't, this might be one of the best provinces in the game, but they only have 30 total arable land, so it's a little bit tougher to build tall. And another one is Washington, D.C., which gives 20% government administration building throughput. This is extremely strong because most of the cost from government administration buildings is actually in the labor. So throughput bonuses, the cheaper or the higher percentage of the total cost of running the building that is in labor, the better a throughput bonus is, because throughput just increases what is it? It increases the amount of input goods you have to put into a building. So here we have a throughput of 75%. It increases the amount of input goods you have to put into a building, and it does not increase the wages. And so it just increases inputs, it increases outputs. Government buildings, if you take a look here, we are paying here around 70k for the paper and the phones in the most expensive in terms of resource PMs, and we're still paying more in wages overall in order to generate a throughput, but we have this throughput bonus here in order to generate as much as possible. So in theory, you might want to take DC and then build up government administrations really tall here, but I think that from a strategic perspective, this is perhaps a little bit weak because if someone occupies DC or lands DC, you're just hosed. If you suddenly lose access to a majority of your bureaucracy, you know, your tax income will come down to nothing, like this sort of stuff. I have to remember there's an image up here of the scoring system. Okay. Next up, with a score, a resource score of 195, we have Punjab, which is the highest or second highest agricultural place in the game now. With all the Chinese ones gotten nerfed, or anyone that's producing rice getting nerfed, this has some of the highest unused arable land in the game. It has 500, let's see, where's my thing? It has 593 total available arable land, and it very importantly has agricultural industries throughput and plantations industries throughput. So this is one of the best provinces in the game for producing silk, for example. It's going to get 20% juice on all this. Overall, you have the most potential output here in Punjab for agriculture because, again, you have a total arable land of 593, as well as these huge throughput juices. It is the second best place to put your capital in the game because you can build industries extremely tall without suffering the negative penalty for migration from being overcrowded. Okay, next honorable mention is the Trucial Coast, which is going to be, which is going to include both the Trucial states and Bahrain. This has a resource score of 208, and it is entirely off the back of oil. There's really nothing here except the oil. The oil hasn't been discovered by the Trucial states. There's, let's see, I think it's level 20 total arable land, which can only be used for tobacco and livestock, as well as there's like 10 total fishing wharves when you have both states, but a whopping, and this is the highest in the game, a whopping 80 oil potential. So very often you will want to take the Trucial Coast or the Trucial states and Bahrain in the game just for the oil. It is also notably very easy or cheap to take on the infamy because it's generally going to have very low population. All right, next up, we have a province in China of Sichuan, which has, notably, it has a decent amount of coal, sulfur, and logging camps. It's one of the higher logging camps provinces in China. It also has this 15% agricultural throughput juice, making it very strong. This is generally one of the strongest provinces in China. It also has a ton of arable land potential of 330 in total, and is one of the few provinces in China that can build opium. Again, it's going to have, as a Chinese province, it's going to have a really high population that you can sap off for your own reasons. We talked about earlier why Chinese provinces are so good. A big part of it is the population, being able to incorporate those into your market, enact multiculturalism, siphon off the pops, and get really cheap labor is all going to make all of your buildings extremely profitable. So we just put Sichuan in there kind of as a placeholder for Chinese provinces in general, talk about why they're really good. Next up, with a With a resource score of 217, we have the province of Hokkaido. This got an honorable mention because it is the most balanced province. It has just about every single resource. Going through it really quick, it has 8 gold, which is very important and valuable, 36 lead, 33 iron, 36 coal, 32 sulfur, 9 lumber, 8 whales, and 10 fish. Notably, you can even get oil here because it does have the whales. Japan doesn't have all of it. That's why these numbers are not currently correct in that way. And then you kind of have a relatively low arable land of 20 in total. Pretty balanced province. Just thought it would be neat to mention that. Next up, with a resource score of 236 in terms of the honorable mentions, we have New South Wales. They have 80 coal mines, notably 12 iron mines, which is extremely valuable. I believe it's 10 oil rigs total in terms of their potential. Yeah, it is 10. We have 36 iron mines, 7 logging camps, 4 whaling stations, 8 fishing wharves. This is an honorable mention because it's the best province in Australia, but also because I'm expecting that sometime in the near-ish future that Australian provinces might get a rework, because this place only has an arable land of 30. Australian provinces in general seem to have extraordinarily low arable land in a way that doesn't quite make sense, and expect all of them to get a lot better if they get huge arable land nerfs or buffs. And if this gets a really substantive arable land buff, like for example if this were like 300 or something, it would definitely be kind of in the running for being maybe not top 10 but top 15 province. Very strong resource score of 236 with only 30 arable land. The only other one that stands out as being anywhere close to that is Lancashire, which has really low arable land but has a ton of resources. But okay. Next up in the honorable mentions, we have the best province in South America, Minas Geres, which has a whopping it has the gold mines of 10. It has 24 logging camps, which is quite a bit. It has some lead mines, some iron mines, a little bit of oil. I believe the total discoverable oil here is 5. Rubber plantations of 7. And a quite large arable land score of 240. Generally speaking, a lot of these provinces got buffed in terms of the arable land, so this is going to be quite a strong province. It's the best in South America, and I just thought I would mention it here. Next up on the honorable mention list, we have the place with the absolute most lead possible, which is Illinois, which has a lead mine of 90. I don't think it just has an infrastructure bonus. It has 60 coal mines, 11 logging camps, and a pretty sizable amount of arable land. Let's see here, just looking it up off to the side. It is an arable land potential of 270. This is a strong province. It doesn't have any infrastructure malices, so you can build it tall. Just overall very good. Another example that kind of is similar to this a little bit is Sicily, which has 20% sulfur mines throughput and just has a level 100 sulfur mine. If you need sulfur, taking Sicily is really great. There's one province over here that's really great. North Borneo is okay, and Sindh is okay. And if you're running sulfur is an interesting resource because it's not like everywhere, but you don't need a lot of it. And so if you sort the heat map by potentials, this is one of the best sulfur places. Sicily is the best sulfur place, but you'll see it's not as common as iron and coal, and it's also not as important. And so if you somehow need a ton of sulfur, these are some places you might want to be interested in taking. Next up, with a resource score of 248, we have Delhi, which is the best province for capitals in the game. Best province to have your capital because it has the most arable land in the game, as far as I'm aware, of 625. This is the most populated state at the start of the game, to my knowledge, that avoided the rice nerf. So all the land that has rice as their farms got nerfed, but this has wheat as its farm, and so you still have an arable land potential of 625. You have the Ganges River, which gives agriculture throughput, notably not plantations. And so, the wheat farms and I think cotton plantations count as agriculture, livestock counts as agriculture. These will all get 15% juice. And also this province is one of the few provinces that has access to opiums, dyes, and silk in the entire game. There's very few of these. There's a few in like southern China. There's a few in India. I think some kind of down here, but a lot of these provinces got nerfed down here. And okay, that was Delhi with a resource score of 248. Next up, we have the best African province that didn't make the top 10 list, and that is Transvaal. And this also gets an honorable mention because it is quite easy to take Transvaal early on in the game, because you just come in through Zululand and then you conquer Transvaal. This has a resource score of 264, which is quite good. It's largely off the back of the gold mines. This is also the best gold mine state to take early in the game. You know, up here is hard to take from Russia. This is the softest and easiest place to take gold early in the game. Gold is extremely valuable. It also has more early game resources in coal of 104, iron mines of 60, logging camps of 5. The arable land, nothing to write home about. 50 total arable land, and it's kind of a whatever. It does have the negative bonus of malaria, which will cause more mortality. You don't really want to build tall here, but it also gets a 10% coal mining's juice, and it doesn't have negative state construction efficiency, making this province extremely strong. It is one of the strongest provinces, if not the strongest province, to not make the cut. The other kind of honorable mention, perhaps, for strongest province is, I think this is the best resource or it's one of the best resource provinces in the game, with a resource score of 300, and then is Ural. This would be, I think Transvaal being easily accessible kind of makes it higher, but it's not a better state because it's easy to get. It's just more important to know about Transvaal. But Ural has an absolute ton of resources. This is the second most resources out of any state in the game. Only arable land count of 40, but it is second only to Silesia in terms of its mining resources available. The Silesia is over here, back at the start. This was our number 10. But Ural has level 96 iron mine, level 84 coal mine, 81 lead mine, and it also has 20% iron mining throughput juice, but it suffers from the minus infrastructure state construction efficiency, so you don't want to build up tall here in terms of in manufacturing as much, but it otherwise is an extremely strong state for getting resources, and this is, you know, good to think about. And these are all of our honorable mentions, so we will continue on to our top 3, and all of these 3 give global bonuses and don't really have that higher resource score. In third place, this province used to be the one I thought was the very best in the game. It suffered a little bit from the nerf, but in third place we have Beijing. Beijing has a little bit of resources. It doesn't have any innate state bonuses. It has 14 lead, 3 fishing wharves, 2 logging camps. It also has a total arable land of 322, which is nothing to sneeze at, but it's not why it's getting up here. Why it's getting up here is the unique building, the Forbidden City, which gives 50 authority and 20 legitimacy from including the head of state of government, with no malice in terms of accidentally juicing up the religious group. And the 20 legitimacy from including the head of state and government is going to be extremely strong, because if you can be righteous, you get more, you can pass stuff faster, but you also get more loyalists. The loyalists allow you to harvest more bonuses from countries easier, and some of these bonuses are extremely strong. You know, being able to get 20% workforce ratio, being able to get 20% manufacturing income, being able to get 25% migration attraction, or 50% if it's doubled because the interest group is powerful. All this is so powerful, and it's so much easier when you take Beijing. Beijing also, notably, if you wanted to like stick on monarchy or stick up in oligarchy, can allow you to maintain a really high legitimacy score that otherwise would be really hard to do. And so it is difficult to kind of evaluate how good this is in the vacuum, but I think that this makes this one of the best states in the game, on top of also, as a Chinese province, giving you just 16 mil pops. If there is a Chinese province to take, just to try and get a bunch of pops, it is Beijing, and I don't think it's close. Just very, very, very strong. Again, it's kind of hard to evaluate some of these in a vacuum, because it is, the bonus is not, it's not directly the value of the state itself, but it boosts all your other states a tremendous amount. And so this is one to often take in most of your runs, especially because China at the start of the game is very, very weak. It's easy to land them, it's easy to beat them up, it's easy to take the province. In second place, we have one I recently discovered, and maybe this should be third and should be swapped, but that is Eastern Mali, and Eastern Mali has a resource score of 18, although notably, you can build opium here, so this is quite nice, actually. But the reason you're here is for the Mosque of Djenne, however this is pronounced, which gives you, in my estimation, this is the best monument in the game, and it gives 20% education access. Now, you don't like the political strength juice in terms of for your religious group. Generally speaking, I think this is not very good, but 20% education access is equivalent to a level 2 institution for public schools, just in terms of education access, which is insane. So it's going to be really, really easy to juice up the literacy. Obviously, once you research all the text, this doesn't do anything anymore, but before you research all the text, it's very, very good, and all you have to do is, you know, colonize through the windward coast and then take it from the people who start off with it. The AI almost never builds this building, which is why I was unaware of it for so long, looking through for like all these monuments. The AI doesn't build this monument, but it's extremely strong. It's important to emphasize on all of these monuments, you can juice them up by using the law, colonial exploitation, and not incorporating the state. In this case, for this run, we had incorporated Eastern Mali, but if Eastern Mali was not incorporated, it would give 22% education access. So for us, for this game in Sokoto here, we have a whopping 20% education access on top of our 4.5% wealth education access, and we have about 20 standard living here, so on average we are getting around 80% education access, which is insane total, because we have a level 5 institution. It's important to note that Beijing will also benefit from the economies of scale juice, so you will get 22 or not economies of scale, but from the colonial exploitation throughput juice, you will get 22 legitimacy from including the head of the state and government, and 55 authority. And this is base authority, which is multiplied by all of these percentages, you know, mass communication, nationalism, pan-nationalism, etc. Which, again, just talking about one of the honorable mentions, because we're talking about these, Vatican City, 100 authority, 100 influence. Extremely strong, but overall the state's not that good, and I think that the juice to the religious group is pretty substantive negative, and this is nowhere near, in my estimation, as good as the education access. Okay, so that was number 2. And in first place, with a resource score of 108, is New York. Now, New York has the Statue of Liberty in term. Well, let's talk about the resources first. You have a decent amount of iron, some logging, some fishing wharves, and some whaling stations. Meh. And you also have a arable land of 120, which is solid. It's not terrible, but what's really there's two things that are extremely strong about New York. The first is the Statue of Liberty, which in my opinion is maybe second or third best monument. It gives 25% migration attraction. This is modified by the 10% juice from colonial exploitation here. This gives 25% migration attraction to all of the states in your country. Allow me to repeat that. It gives 25% migration attraction to all the states in your country, which is extremely powerful. This allows you to pull down the equilibrium cost of labor lower, which will make all of your places more profitable. So, you know, you continue to attract more and more and more migrants in order... And it's largely based on standard of living, right? And so what having extra migration attraction will do is it will decrease the standard of living that you need to have in order to attract migrants. And generally this is driven by wages, and so it'll decrease the amount of wages you need to pay in order to attract migration. And so this modifier is extremely strong. But secondly, it also juices your country through the Niagara Falls. You also get the 25% hardwood output, and also the shipyards building throughput, which is tremendously strong as well. But the 20% juice on electricity output is also extremely strong. There's only 3 states in the game that give it: Ontario, New York, and Dalmatia gives a 15% juice. And so for just about any country, taking New York and then building up the electricity is just extremely strong if you can somehow manage it. It costs a lot of infamy, but in my opinion, this is the best state in the game. I used to think it was Beijing, but now I think it's New York, just because you have like 2 extremely solid bonuses. You know, this 20% electricity, it might not be as good as on its own, as good as this juice on your, education access that you get in Eastern Mali, but and the 25% migration, same thing. But these two together, I don't think it's the New York is just an absurd state. In Victoria 3, moving forward in a lot more of my runs, I'll probably just try and take New York, and it also does like triple because you get the shipyards building throughput. Now, you can get a higher one of 15% if you want to take a state off of Norway, you want to take the home countries, or you want to take this state, Zealand here. These are the ones that give 15%, but other than that, just getting a 10% throughput bonus on your shipyards is also really good, and you just build shipyards and electricity here and just pop off. Anyways, this has been my list. If you feel that I missed a country, or you want to just know what a country will score on the resource score if I plug it into my spreadsheet, feel free to let me know or to ask this sort of thing. If you feel that, I'm curious if to what extent people think that my scoring on the resource scores was fair or unfair. I have a sneaking suspicion that arable land should maybe be like 0.22, and like gold should maybe be a little bit higher. Maybe lead should be 1.1 or 1.15, and sulfur should be 0.9, like these sorts of things. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you have ideas for future tutorials, feel free to let me know. More than happy to listen / do tutorials, pretty much taking requests. The last tutorial was just a request. Let's see, I think that's about it. So if you've made it to the end, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube algorithm stuff, and have a good day.